Hey there and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode number 70. And today we're going to talk about motivation, in particular how to become more self-motivated. Because I think everyone at some point in their lives struggles to get going, right? You maybe wake up in the morning and you're like, I just can't be bothered. Or you have goals and you're making progress, but you're getting dragged down with the mundanity of it. Or maybe you get so lost in the process that you forget why you're doing it in the first place. And the whole thing starts to feel like a bit of a drag, a bit of a duty. Well, in this episode, I want to share with you a simple 3-step process you can use to kickstart your motivational machine so that you can become more self-motivated, get stuff done, and become more consistent. So grab a cuppa or whatever you do when you're listening to your podcasts, and let's get started. So like I said, in this episode, we're going to take a look at how to become more self-motivated. We're going to take a look at a 3-step process you can whip out whenever you want that can help you kickstart your motivational machine. So as a starter point, I wanted to say that motivation is key to everything. You need a certain level of motivation to just get out of bed in the morning and to figure out what you want for breakfast. You need it to be effective, to do daily tasks in order to manage your life, and you need it to take action towards your goals. So it is a crucial resource to have influence over. And the thing is, many people think that it's not something that they have any influence over whatsoever, that it just kind of happens by chance, or they only have a certain amount of motivation that's in them. But that's not actually true. Motivation at the end of the day is a state of mind that we can create. And there are a few simple practices that can make a massive difference. And that's what we're going to be talking about today in this 3-step process. So another point I want to make is that even though I'm a firm believer in being self-motivated, not all motivation has to be triggered from within. You can also use external sources. For example, getting a coach is an amazing way to give you that extra edge. It doesn't mean that you are completely reliant on the coach, of course not. It's still important to be motivated from the inside, but it will give you that extra edge, and it's being triggered from the outside. I know whenever I have a coach, the desire I have to move forward is incredible because I feel accountable to the coach. I know I'm going to see them a couple of weeks later or a week later, so I feel this huge desire just to push myself a little bit further than what I normally would. I think another example of externally triggered motivation like this is the example of Michael Jordan. So he is, of course, a famous basketball player. I'm sure you know that. If you've seen the documentary The Last Dance on Netflix, then you'll know that one of the things that Jordan did was he deliberately made enemies, at least enemies in his mind. And he used this as a kind of external trigger to feel even more motivated to practice and get better, to prove those enemies wrong. So while you mostly want to be self-motivated, of course, having external triggers to give you that extra edge is still absolutely fine. In fact, it can be really great. So anyway, let's take a look at this 3-step process. Step number 1. Create a goal that contains the following 3 elements. It should be challenging, important, and meaningful. So let's break that down. So first of all, you want to create a goal that is challenging, and that will create a certain level of motivation, a certain level of desire to actually take action. So you want to create something that actually does stretch you, it challenges you, but it doesn't overwhelm you. If a goal is too easy, then it won't be enough to trigger high levels of desire and determination. But if it's too difficult, it may well overwhelm you, kick in imposter syndrome, and you end up paralysed and doing nothing. So there's a famous psychologist that you may have heard of called Albert Bandura, and he did a lot of work into something called self-efficacy. So that is a person's belief in their ability to succeed in certain situations. And what he found was that if a goal is too challenging, a person's self-efficacy or their self-belief will drop and they will actually lose motivation. And this makes sense, doesn't it? If you don't believe that you can do something, then you probably won't even bother. What's the point in even starting if you believe that you're going to fail? But if it's challenging but not overwhelming, then it becomes a goal that excites you and also one that feels achievable. And this is a lovely motivational sweet spot. So you want to find that point where the goal is challenging enough to stimulate excitement, but not so much that you feel utterly overwhelmed, kick in your imposter syndrome, and end up feeling demotivated as a result. So secondly, you also want to make sure that the goal is important. If something is important, you subconsciously start to allocate resources to the attainment of that goal. At the end of the day, we are value-driven creatures. So if we perceive a goal to be important, then that's going to get the juices flowing, isn't it? It's going to get you excited. So this is why it's really important to spend time exploring your why. That's where so much of your motivation comes from. Why do you want this goal? Why do you want to complete this task? Why is it important in the first place? What's it going to give you that's going to enrich your life? These are crucial questions, and when you reflect on them, pretty soon you'll start to feel a desire, a motivation, and an excitement start to bubble up within. So this is also crucial when you've been working towards a goal for a long time. It can be so easy to get lost in the detail and not see the forest from the trees. We can lose touch with our why because we're so bogged down in the daily grind. So it's important to take the time out every now and again to re-clarify and connect with our why, or reconnect with our why. And thirdly, you want to also make sure that the goal is meaningful. We don't always have to be happy all the time, but we do have to believe that what we're doing is meaningful. Creating meaning is one of the most powerful driving forces that we have as human beings. There's a great book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I'll include a link to it in the show notes if you want to check it out. So he was a psychiatrist who survived the Holocaust in Nazi Germany. And in his book, he says that he viewed this horrendous event from two different perspectives. First of all, he was in it. He experienced the atrocities personally. But secondly, he could also look on as an observer of human behaviour because of his training in psychology. And what he found was that there was a big difference between the people who survived versus the people who perished, outside of external factors and luck and all of those things, of course. He found that the ones who survived were those who somehow managed to attach a positive meaning to these horrible experiences. Those were the ones, like I said, outside of luck and external factors, that managed to keep going. That they said to themselves, you know what, this is a terrible situation, but there has to be some kind of greater meaning behind this. So exploring the meaning behind your goal, and any action you do for that matter, is crucial to triggering long-term motivation. So the question you want to ask is, what is the greater purpose behind what I'm doing here? If you ask that question pretty much before you do anything, then that's going to get a real high quality of answer. And it's going to supply a lot of motivation because you're starting to delve into the meaning. You're starting to connect with it. And if you don't get a satisfactory answer back from that question, maybe it's worth changing your direction. Maybe that's a sign that you could be doing something more meaningful. So that's step one, create a goal that contains the three elements. It's challenging, important, and meaningful, and that will trigger so much motivation. So then we move on to step number two, and that is where you're looking to intensify your emotion, connect with it even more. So in step one, you're opening up the box of motivation. You're starting to trigger some of it. In step two, that's where you go deeper and really begin to ramp things up and make the feelings more intense. So to do this, you want to take your goal from step one and run it through the following two checks. So check number one, you want to locate your most important why. So I mentioned in step one that it's really important to figure out your why. Why is this goal or task important to you? What's it going to do for you or get you? Well, what you want to do is you want to ask those questions a lot, and eventually you'll get a bunch of reasons why the goal or why the task is important. And of course, that's going to trigger a lot of motivation. But then, if you want to take it even further, you want to look at the reasons that you've come up with and find the most important one, the one that really stands out, the one that gives you the biggest kick, the biggest desire to take action. We all have a most important why when it comes to our goals, a primary reason that packs a punch and causes us to feel an intense sense of desire to take action. So you want to find out what that is for you. You know, the motivational speaker Tony Robbins says that people don't take action because they don't have enough reasons to. And that's partially true, but I don't think it's about finding hundreds of reasons to do something. I think it's about finding the right reasons, the one or two that really get you going. So what you want to do is you want to first write that list of all the reasons why your goal is important, ask those questions repeatedly, then look through the list and pick out the most important ones, and it should only be one or two that really jump out. And you'll know that you've got it because when you read it, you'll just get this jolt of desire to take action. And then you want to think about that, you want to reflect on it. The more you reflect on it, the stronger that motivation will begin to build. Then you want to run it through check 2, and that's where you consider the negative consequences of not taking action. So this might sound a little bit negative, but I promise you it's not. It's done with a positive intent. But as human beings, one of the strongest forces that causes us to take action is pain. So we can use pain as an additional fuel. Now, I don't recommend that you use pain as a primary motivator. That can be draining and very unhealthy if you use it primarily over a long period of time. But it's very useful every now and again to remind yourself of those consequences just to give you that extra kick up the arse. Sometimes we need it. So you want to consider, what are the negative consequences of not taking action here? What might happen if you don't do something, if you don't take consistent action towards this goal? By exploring this, it can give you that extra edge. It can also be useful to consider the negative consequences of not taking action over a longer period of time. If you didn't do this over a period of weeks, months, or potentially years, how would that then negatively impact your life? And I know that sounds a little bit negative. Like I say, you don't want to be using this as a primary motivation, but it can create a really powerful spike in your motivation that creates this sense of urgency and gives you that extra edge. So you want to spend some time considering both of these things in your imagination, your most important whys, and the negative consequences if you don't take action. Connect with them and you'll feel this tremendous energy build up. So that's step number 2, and then we move on to the final step, step number 3, and that is to take action. You know, there's no point in doing these fancy mindset techniques if you're not going to use it for something. So now it's time to take action. And in truth, if you've done the first 2 steps well, you'll be desperate to take action. You'll feel that energy, you'll feel that desire. So first, you might want to make an action plan, figure out what the first step is, and then do it. And what you'll find is the more action you take, the more this will then fuel further action. It becomes a positive feedback loop. So just some quick guidelines I'd like to share with you on taking action. Number 1, think long as well as short term. So figure out what you need to do on a day-to-day basis to move things forward, and also what you need to do consistently over a longer period of time. Number 2, sequence your actions. Actions usually have to be taken in a particular order, so I think it's useful to sequence them. Take a look at what you have to do and then put them in order. What do you need to do first, second, third, fourth, and so on. And guideline number 3, review and be flexible. Our important goals generally remain quite fixed, especially if they're deeply meaningful to us, but actions can change, they can be fluid. What you need to do to achieve your goals can be different today than they are tomorrow or next week or next month. Times change, people change, situations change, so you've got to be flexible. Also, you want to review what you're doing as well and then change accordingly. If what you're doing isn't working, then change your approach. It's like that definition of insanity. It's to do the same thing over and over again and expect different results. So you want to do a review and do a check to see if your actions are taking you closer or further away, and what changes, if any, do you need to make. And then finally, guideline number 4, always remember the journey of 1,000 miles begins with the first step. If it's a particularly big and challenging goal that you're going after, don't think about it too much in its entirety. That will probably overwhelm you. You just want to think about what the first or next step is, and then just do it. Just break it down into manageable chunks. What can you do now, and then what can you do next? So that is us for this episode. Let's do a review. What did we talk about today? Well, a topic has of course been motivation, how to kickstart your motivational machine. And the first point I made was that motivation is a crucial resource. We all need it to go after our goals and just to manage our life. Also, I made the point that motivation is something that we all have influence over. Some people think that we only have a finite amount or we're given so much at birth, and that's pretty much us. We can't really do anything about it. But that is not true. It's a mental state that we can trigger by going through certain practices. And another point I made was that not all motivation has to be triggered from within. It is okay and sometimes amazing to have external sources of motivation. And then I went through that 3-step process. Step number 1 was where you create a goal that is challenging, important, and meaningful. Find that challenge sweet spot. Don't make it so overwhelming that it kicks in your imposter syndrome and then you start to get demotivated as a result. But don't make it so easy that you don't get excited about it, that it doesn't really stimulate those internal resources. Find that sweet spot. Also, you want to explore your why. Why is this important to you? What are you going to get from it emotionally? And also look for greater meaning. What greater purpose does this serve, or could it serve? Then step number 2, you want to then intensify your motivation. You've done a bit of exploration, so now it's time to really connect with those things and make them feel powerful in your neurology. So make a list of reasons why this is important for you to do, and then locate your most important why, the one that really gets you going, that gets the juices flowing. And also have a think about the potential negative consequences of not taking action. Don't use that as a primary source of motivation, but it can be really good just to give you that extra edge, that little kick up in the arse that we all need from time to time. And then step number 3, take action. Do something, make a plan, and then do that first thing in the plan, and then keep moving through it. Action tends to fuel further actions. So a lot of motivation we get from actually doing things, from moving forward. And the whole thing becomes a positive feedback loop. So that is us for this week. Hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did enjoy it, I would love it if you could follow or subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you're feeling especially generous, if you could leave me a review, it really does help. Also, if you want to share any feedback about this episode, then you can email me at info@mindschool.net. If you have any suggestions for content for episodes, I'd love to hear those too. Sometimes when you're doing a podcast like this, you're speaking into a mic in your own room and you don't really get to know the listeners, so I really would like to hear from you if you've got some feedback. So thank you once again for listening. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll speak to you in the next one. See you later on.